So I'm a little girl. There's this guy named Mr. Earnshaw, and he's married to Mrs. Earnshaw. They both live at Wuthering Heights, which is where you are now, not to be confused with Thrushcross Grange. One has a flag, the other one doesn't, but we'll get back to that later. So Earnshaw goes on this trip thing and shows back with a mysterious boy named Heathcliff, and a broken violin for Hindley, his son. That's Mr. Earnshaw's son, not Heathcliff's. Anyways, Earnshaw also has a daughter, Catherine, who also has a daughter named Catherine, but that's irrelevant for the moment. Earnshaw raises Heathcliff, and basically everyone hates the kid, so he grows up to be really, really angry. Despite this, Catherine falls hopelessly in love with the boy, and they soon grow to be the exact same person. Soon, Mrs. Earnshaw dies, who, let's face it, never really did anything anyways, and Mr. Earnshaw basically forgets that his son exists. Mr. Earnshaw gets really angry, leaves, his father dies, and the son, who is the son of the now dead Mr. Earnshaw, shows back up with this girl named Frances. Mr. Earnshaw, formerly Hindley, has no reason to tolerate Heathcliff's presence and practically enslaves the kid. This pleases Mrs. Earnshaw, the new one, not the dead one, but quite upsets Miss Earnshaw, who strives to keep Heathcliff happy however she can. They both go wandering across the moor to Thrushcross Grange, which only has its flag raised on every alternate Tuesday of the odd month of the year. And while Catherine is there, she gets bitten by a dog and loses her ability to move for 5 weeks straight. During this time, she kind of realizes she has a thing for Edgar, who is a part of the Linton family, who live at the house with a flag that isn't up while she's there. She comes back to the house all proper, having fallen in love with Edgar, which somewhat upsets Heathcliff. Things happen, angry words get said, and before you know it, applesauce is flying across the room. Shortly after, Mrs. Earnshaw dies after giving birth to a new Earnshaw, Hareton, and Hindley decides that he really needs alcohol, which kinda destroys his life. Catherine becomes rather deluded and decides to marry Edgar, despite the fact that Heathcliff is actually a part of her, so Heathcliff runs away. Showing the perfect timing present in all good stories, Heathcliff chooses to return shortly after his love marries a person who really has nothing in common with her. And if keeping up with pop culture says anything, it's that founding a marriage on the basis of money alone is only a slightly better choice than choosing to fight a lion unarmed with anything but a toothpick. Which is odd because the lion, aka Heathcliff, has become mysteriously rich while gone. No one really knows what he did, but it worked for him. Don't do drugs, kids. He lends all of this money to control Mr. Earnshaw, not the dead one, he's a necromancer, and decides to marry Isabella Linton, Mrs. Linton / Catherine / whatever sister-in-law, who actually has a thing for him, despite the fact that he treats her worse than a burnt pizza. Catherine gets pregnant, dies while giving birth to Catherine, and Heathcliff goes slightly insane. Isabella finally comes to her senses and gives birth to a son named Linton, not to be confused with the Linton family, who used to live in the house with the flag. After she flees to London, somewhere amidst all of this, the alcohol thing got a little extreme, and Mr. Earnshaw died. Oops. A dozen years pass, the baking kind though, and Catherine grows up. She's kinda like her mother, but not nearly as angry all the time, and quite a bit less insane. This is probably due to Mr. Linton, who actually ended up being an okay father, despite being a rather pampered child. He tries to keep her from discovering Wuthering Heights, aka House Without a Flag, but that really doesn't end up working out. She meets Hareton, Mrs. Heathcliff dies, Linton comes to live with his father, and things get even worse. Heathcliff launches what he thinks to be an incredibly clever scheme that involves getting Linton to marry Mrs. Linton, aka Catherine, but not the dead one. While they do end up married, Death has other plans, and the deaths of Mr. Linton and Linton, not quite the same person, ruin everything. At least for Heathcliff. He becomes more insane and increasingly obsessed with Catherine. And Catherine. One he can't stop thinking about, the other he forces into servitude at Wuthering Heights. Catherine, the living one, and the dead one actually, doesn't really enjoy living at Wuthering Heights, and can't stand the presence of Hareton, which logically leads to them falling in love. Heathcliff's insanity continues, which causes him to behave more happily than he has in, well, probably his entire life. But he forgets that eating and sleeping are important. He dies. Yeah!